Welcome back to Day Chess. A little bit late today, but I hope it was worth the wait to enjoy this beautiful game between José Raul Capablanca and Savielly Tartakower, played in New York in 1924. You might remember a couple of videos ago, maybe 3 or 4, I chose the game between Akiba Rubinstein and Capablanca, played in 1911 in San Sebastian. That was the start of José Raul Capablanca's career in chess and basically the start of his performances in Europe. That was actually his first tournament. Although he lost that game, he ended up winning that tournament. Now we're going to see a game that he's playing during his peak of his chess career, during the time that he was a world champion. Those years were 1921 till 1927. So let's see that game. I'm sure you already know that he was born in Cuba, was famous for his endgames, and today I promise you won't be sorry for watching this video, especially for the impressive endgame that he played against Tartakower, who was born in Poland but spent a lot of his life in Austria and France. And he was a top player of the world in the beginning of the 20th century. He's famous for having invented the orangutan b4, first move, but also c3, I think it's called the Zaragoza, another pronunciation. But anyways, let's enjoy this beautiful game, and I think you might appreciate the new opening. This time we're looking at a Dutch. This is the Dutch with f5. Whether black plays f5, the first move, or the second one after e6, it's the Dutch defense. So let's see how this game went. After knight f6, Capablanca went bishop g5, which is a move that they were playing during those times, early 1900s. Nowadays, g3 is the main system as far as I know, with bishop g2 finishing up the development here. That bishop maybe f4, maybe g5, maybe not at all on this diagonal, but those are the systems. And after this g3, black has two main systems, one of which is d5, playing the stone wall, following by c6, and then as you can see, so many pawns are on black, so black is going to have some problems with that white color bishop, so what he has to do is to get rid of it, bringing it normally through h5 and try to give it on the knight. And the other system for black in this position is to play d6 and then prepare to play e5. But okay, that's another story, another game, another system. Let us go back to the main line, the game, bishop g5, bishop e7. So far, as you can see, both players are just finishing up their development, which is something they were very cautiously about when they were playing in the beginning of the 20th century. They were really making sure their pieces were very well developed, and they were trying not to play the same piece more than once. Now with bishop d3, white is going to prepare some e4 later on. So black finishes his development, castle, and here queen e8. The thing is, now after having played b6, bishop b7, this bishop does not protect either e6 or f5 pawns. Why do I say both? Well, for example, if he plays d6 in this position, we can go, for example, rook e1, and if black plays knight d7, maybe now e4, and these pawns are going to be traded. For example, if black captures, simply knight takes, and black is going to have some troubles on the e6 pawn that now is not protected by anything. And if he doesn't take, then, well, I can take possibly in f5, and okay, you might be losing material. E6 square is going to be weak. So these are some of the little weaknesses for black in this type of opening. Tartakower went for queen e8. The idea is to try to bring the queen on the other side of the board. And now queen to e2. Actually, I've noticed some people captured in f6, but I don't recommend it. Wait for black to play h6, weaken his position a little bit, and then you can give away the bishop. Don't hurry to give away the bishop on a knight if it's not necessary. Just finish your development and try to have a plan that is going to involve some attacking either in the center or on a flank. Knight e4. Now, of course, black doesn't have that much space, so trades are good for him. Bishop takes e7. Now, intermediate move, knight takes e3, forcing white, because the queen is being attacked, forcing white to capture back, and now queen takes e7. So these two pawns are now weak. Not only these two pawns, but also this pawn in a2. Notice it's remained alone, on a lone island here in a2. So white is going to try to find a way to get rid of, if possible, this pawn too, but in general, try to get rid of this pawn. The downside for black is that he has the knight and the rook undeveloped yet, so he's going to have some trouble finding the best squares for them, because the position is closed and black doesn't have that much space, and not a really good square for that knight in b8. So white went a4, trying to get rid of his pawn immediately with a5. And here I think a mistake by Tartakower. He gave away the bishop for the knight without anybody to pressure him to do so. I believe personally that knight c6 was a better choice, stopping a5, finishing up the development. And for example, if white were to play e4, which is basically the idea in this position, we need to open up a little bit for this bishop to have some play, maybe play f4, close up the position a little bit, and try to plan some attack on the king side. Instead, like I said, Tartakower captured in f3, and here after queen takes f3, knight c6, white seems to be doing really great, because your knight doesn't have a good outpost. If it would have, then I would say yes, that was a great trade, but we cannot find. e4 is nothing, first of all because I can just take and win a pawn, but even if I couldn't, if my queen is going to be out of there, I can play f3 and chase your knight away from here. So e4 is not an outpost for black's knight. Now rook f to b1. It's interesting how Capablanca is playing on both flanks, and you're gonna see he's one of those famous players for that. Just trying to make a move on one side, pretending you're threatening something, then go on the other side, pretending you're threatening something on the other side, kind of confusing the opponent in a way, but he had a clear idea of what he wanted to do, so don't think his moves made no sense, because they did. Now, with this rook b1, I personally could not figure out exactly what he wanted, but it was definitely in a way confusing. I think he could have played queen h3, for example, instead of playing rook b1. Rook b1 was not really necessary, but it's okay. Queen h3 now, as you can see, he keeps this pawn f5 attacked, so that black, because with rook a8, he was threatening some e5, and now with the queen h3, we're keeping that pawn attacked, so black cannot push because this pawn will be hanging. So now rook f6, black is trying to start some attacking on the king side, but without e5 it's kinda tough, and now especially white played f4, blockading this pawn from trying to advance, opening up the second rank so I can defend with rook a2 or b2 the g2 pawn in any case, and most importantly not allowing black to push e5. So the position is really nice now for white. He has more space, he has most of his pawns on black, which is good for his bishop, right, because he can move freely, maybe bringing on this diagonal, and now he can basically just improve his position a little bit more, and you're going to see a way to break through, because eventually we do need to open up the position a little bit. Our bishop doesn't do much. Knight a5, trying to attack c4, but if you only attack it with a knight, you're not going to be able to win it. Now d6, black is trying to get c5 for e5, but now rook e1, because the rook wasn't doing that much there. I personally, like I said, I don't know what he meant to do with the rook b1. But now rook e1, getting ready to play e4. This is very important, because we need our bishop to be active, to do something. Now e4, it's finally the moment to do so. Our rook is active. This one needs to stay in a1, because the a4 pawn, we didn't manage to get rid of it, and it's weak currently. The bishop cannot protect both of these weaknesses for the moment. Now black is kind of forced to take. Queen takes. Little threat there in h7, as you can see, but g6 just stops it. And now g3, another move that's really good for white, strengthening the position, putting another pawn on the black square, getting ready for the endgame where this king will be able to get close to the center. King f8, king g2, rook f7, now h4, making sure black won't have any counterplay with g5 or anything. And here black made a big mistake. He played d5, not realizing that the endgame is much better for white. Instead, I think if you really wanted to trade some pieces, maybe knight takes c4 was a better choice, because now after d5, bishop b5 takes, bishop takes, rook takes, rook takes e4. Yes, we have this weakness here, but we can easily protect with the king. We can try to activate our rook that way to keep this rook passive, and this should be an endgame. It's slightly better for white because, especially in this moment, I can immediately be able to play rook. I'll be able to play rook e5, but I think black should be able to hold this without much trouble. But after d5, let's see how Capablanca was able to show his superiority in the endgame. C takes d5, okay, you have to take. And now we're going to the endgame. Takes, takes, takes. And here's the deal. The bishop in d3, it seems that it doesn't do much because there's this chain of pawns which is just controlling the squares, and this bishop can't do much. But in fact, we can play h5, creating a weakness here, or maybe two if you take, and then we'll have the first weakness created. So white will have some way of activating his rook. Rook e1 is another possibility, but besides e5, and maybe I can protect that with c6, you won't do much. So we definitely need another entrance. So Capablanca went for h5. Now rook f6, defending the pawn, because like I said, if you take in h5, rook h1, and you've created two weaknesses, h5 and h7. I'm going to win them both and then remain with two free linked passed pawns. So rook f6, now we take immediately. Here is one of those moments that you get rid of the tension immediately because you're creating a weakness in g6, and now all we have to do is bring our rook to attack it. Rook h1, preparing to activate the rook in h6 or h7 and utilize his advantage on the king side. And as you notice, this knight in a5, yeah, it was attacking that pawn in c4, but once the pawn is gone, that knight is useless there. It really needs to find a way back into play, and it's very hard right now because white is just playing everything with tempo. Now attacking c7, a7 is weak as well, so you can't push that pawn. The only defense move in this position is rook c6, and now a very nice move by Capablanca, g4. Just going for preparing at some point to get some free pawn, or maybe two pawns if g6 pawn falls. Knight c4, it's time to bring that knight back into play. For example, if here black would have taken in c3, just bishop takes g6, and just imagine these two pawns going, especially this pawn getting to f6 and rook h8 made ideas. So knight c4 and now g5, making sure that pawn remains in g6, stuck forever, and a very easy target for white's pieces. Knight e3 checking f3, knight f5 trying to blockade the action of the bishop, but unfortunately that doesn't help him because the rook endgame is simply lost. After g takes f5, as you can see, white has this very nice entrance with the king, and black can't do much. King g3, if it was black's move and he could take in c3, yes, but because it is white to move, he's simply entering g6 now, bringing the king to f6. And as you notice now, rook e4 was played by Tartakower, trying to make white to capture in f5. But no, we don't take here because this pawn is actually protecting us from checks. So king f6, there's no checks from behind, threatening that mate. Now rook g7 check. Now rook takes c7, threatening mate again. Now we take the pawn because there are no checks behind, and now when you give me checks in this way, I'm going to come win your pawn. Now king back to f6, threatening mate, and as you can see, white just stayed active. g7, if the pawn endgame would be simply lost. So now Capablanca just won that pawn, and now it's just going for the queen. Rook c7, king c6, and d6, and after this Tartakower resigned. This pawn is going for the queen. Stay tuned for more!